Hello. Today I am going to be making a sympathy card, and I started to make this video earlier and got started with it and started coloring when I realized that the video had not been turned on. So I've already started coloring it, but we'll get back to that in a second. I will show you the card itself. It is a with love and sympathy card, and it says "So sorry for your loss" on the inside. And anyway, I'll show you everything that I used to make this card. Starting with the sentiment is from Itty Bitty Greetings. And the stamped image is from Christmas Rose. It has two stamp sets, and it has some coordinating dies. I used this die here on vellum to cut out the little piece for the bottom down here. This image was stamped on watercolor paper and heat set with white embossing powder. I used the little rose from the Climbing Rose for the inside of the card. And from Prized Peony, I used So Sorry for Your Loss. For the outside mat of the front of the card, I used the Scripty embossing folder. And the little design elements are gold glitter enamel dots. I also cut out the inside and the image with the stitched rectangle dies. And the sentiment was punched out with the classic label punch. And to give a little pop of color behind the sentiment, I used some Blushing Bride ribbon. On the back of the ribbon and the little sentiment, so that they will stick down, I put double-sided tape. I have two pieces of the twine here, or the linen thread, one to wrap around the front of the mat of the card, and one to tie a bow off to the side. So those are the two pieces of twine. So I'll just go through and color some more on the image just to show you how I got started. You know how to watercolor. I used a watercolor brush. I keep a rag handy so that I can dab the paint as needed. It's very simple. I used the colors that I used. The rose is Flirty Flamingo. And I used the ink pads by pressing the ink into the lid and then coloring with the watercolor pen. For the pine cones, I used Early Espresso and Soft Suede. For the little berries, I didn't want this to look like a Christmassy card because it is a sympathy card, so I opted for crushed curry for the berries, for the spray around the rose. For the greenery, for the pines and the leaves, I used Mossy Meadow and Old Olive. So to color the rose, I started with some of the shadow areas where the paint is the darkest. Just kind of shadowed where I felt shadows would be. And you can go back after the paint is dry and put more shadows in and then blend them. It looks like I have a little yellow on my paintbrush. Don't do that. You can take that up by wetting the area and dabbing it off on your either paper towel. I keep a rag handy. You can take that up. Anytime you get too much color or the wrong color, you can take it up by using your watercolor pen. I can see that I've got some, I don't know if it's the brown or yellow in with the Flirty Flamingo, but I'll have to clean that out of there. Just get a little towel here. Just gonna wipe that out so that I don't pick up that brown again and start over. So sorry about that. It was a little frustrating when I thought the video was finished and I was ready to upload it and it hadn't recorded at all. So, okay, so I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm going to add a little water there and go back and go over this area here. I'm afraid it's still going to have some of the yellow, but it's okay. I mean, flowers are not all one tone, one color. They're variegated in ways, and depending on how the light hits them, you know, you'll have shadows and lighter areas when the sun hits them. So I had gotten started, like I said, when I thought that the video was running, and just wanted to give a little demonstration on how I colored the various areas on the image so that you could get started. When I was taking art classes, I had an instructor that if you couldn't get started, he would say you have white canvas syndrome. And so he'd come over and take your brush and just dip it in paint and put it on your canvas. And he says, now don't be afraid to get started. You need to either cover that up or mix it up or use it. So it was quite an interesting way to teach you not to be afraid to put some color down and get started with your design. So this is a little different. This isn't freehand painting by any means, or watercoloring on a big piece of watercolor paper. These are just small elements. It's nice to have them stamped and heat embossed so that you can keep from going outside the lines. But anyway, the flower itself was painted with various degrees of the Flirty Flamingo, the 2 roses. And I colored the pine cones with both colors of the brown. I started with the soft suede and kind of colored through all the parts that of the paper, and then let it dry a little bit, and then went over some parts of it with the early espresso, and then dabbed it with my towel so it wouldn't be too dark. And then for the leaves, I started with the mossy meadow and went up through the center, and then came back with the old olive and went around the edges just to give it a little bit of variegated color. With the pine needles, I stuck with the old olive and just kind of swiped around them, and then I dabbed the water with my paper towel or my rag so that it didn't pool up on top of the raised areas that were heat embossed. And like I said, for the berries, I chose yellow so it didn't look like a Christmassy seam, especially since this is a sympathy card. You could change the card by you could make it a birthday card and make the berries whatever color you like, but I thought the yellow was rather attractive. So here's the card so that you can see how it was colored. And again, for the matte, first I glued the image down to the matted dry embossed piece, and then I wrapped the twine around 3 times then I applied the, I just set this little element down on top of the twine, and then took the paper backing off the tape for the ribbon and placed that down, and it held it in place. And then I did the same thing for the sentiment so that it would stick to the top of the ribbon, and put those there. And then I took a smaller piece of twine and tied a bow around the edge. You can see that here. And then I used the gold glimmer dots. So that is the card, sympathy card that I've made for today. Thank you very much for watching my video. I'm sorry you didn't get to see much more of the coloring, but you get the idea. And if you feel that you've gotten it too dark, you can go back with a wet brush and pick up some of the color. I wouldn't rub in a circle, but you can go back and pick up some of the color and wipe it off on your towel or your rag, and it will lighten up those areas. The water just acts as a little bit of an eraser. You can see how it kind of picks it up there. Okay, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you very much for watching the video.